Hey guys, I'm Rob and welcome back to Rob's Model Cars. Now I've had quite a few requests from a few of you subscribers to show you where I build my custom models. So today's video is going to be a workshop tour. Now I've actually got three separate areas where I work on my models. So this is the main area, which is in my home office inside the house. And this is where I do most of the disassembly of models, a lot of detail painting, detail work, crafting handmade parts, and then final assembly of models. Then I've got another area in my garage. That's where I do all the messy stuff. So I've got my Dremel multi-tool out there. That's where I do all the drilling and grinding of die cast. And that's also where I mix all my automotive paints as well. Then I've got a third area. A couple of years ago, I built myself a miniature version of an automotive spray booth, and that is where I paint all my custom models in automotive 2K paints. So after I show you this area here, I'll take you into the garage and I'll show you that area, and then I'll show you the spray booth. Now I'll start and give you a little bit of history of my model building. So I started building models when I was around 13, 14 years old. And I started with plastic model kits. So I built everything from model cars to planes to tanks to fighter jets. And then I got involved in the model building of trucks. I started that because my dad drove semi-trailers part-time when I was a teenager in the 1980s. And there was a real scene there with people building model trucks and modifying them and trying to make models of local Australian trucks, and I got heavily into that and started entering competitions. Now I actually won my first award as a teenager with a model truck semi-trailer that I built, which was quite an accomplishment for a 15-year-old. It was a good time, and then pretty much I built models all the way up till around the year 2000, mostly just cars for that last 10 years, plastic model kits, 1/24th scale, and some of the larger models as well, some of the Fujimi 1/16th scale model cars, definitely swinging towards more supercars than anything else. I took a bit of a break from the year 2000 to about 2012 as I started up a construction business for my main occupation in life. But then after 2012, around 2013, I really started getting back into modeling, and that's when I really started building or modifying die-cast cars, repainting them and pulling them apart and modifying it. And the rest, they say, is history. So we're in 2020, and I've been doing that for around 8 years now. So for those that subscribe to the channel, you'll see that I've really been churning out the supercar models over the last couple of years. I've been collecting die-cast cars for around 25 years. That never stopped while I set up my construction business, but the modeling did. But I wouldn't consider myself an absolute pro, but I have learnt a lot over the years. I'm still learning a lot of things as well from the die-cast forums. That's the one good thing about the scale modeling community, is that we can all learn some new tricks and tips from each other. And that's a really rewarding part of the hobby for me as well, to learn and share what I've learnt as well with other model builders. All right, so let's get into my main workbench area here. So it's not a massive workspace. The bench top is only 4 foot by 2.5 foot. Of course, I've got my modeling pad here for cutting and just to keep the mess off the bench top. I've actually made a light bar which runs across the top, which is not too far away from the work surface, so it gives me lots of light. That has a 4000K fluorescent tube in it, which is a nice color balance to see what I'm doing. It gives a ton of lights close to me instead of relying on a roof light in the room. And another new addition I have added is this magnifier. Now these are available locally in Australia. These are around 120 Australian dollars, and this has been absolutely fantastic. I'm 51 years old now, so the eyesight's not as good as it used to be, so this has helped out dramatically with all the detail assembly and painting of very small little details. It comes with a dust cover on the top, it comes with a big 5-inch viewing window in here, and it's got 2 levels of LED brightness as well, which is absolutely superb. You can move it around wherever you want, so I can actually get underneath, look through the top, and even paint little details as well. Fantastic addition to the workbench. So even if you are a lot younger than I am and you are a model builder, I can highly recommend getting yourself one of those magnifiers. It really does make a huge difference in your abilities to really tackle those little fine details. Now the rest of the setup here I've got, I just made this racking system. This is just out of some 16mm white melamine that they build kitchen cupboards out of. I've used some aluminium angle in here to support these little boxes. And these little boxes I just got from my local hardware store, around 10 Australian dollars each. And they just basically slide in and hold everything in place. So when I'm sitting here, everything is within reach, and it seems to work pretty well. I've had this set up now for a couple of years, and it's a lot cheaper than buying some of the pre-made hobby stations that you can buy with all the little boxes and things like that. So this is a cheap way of doing it. Everything's in the one place, and it can be picked up in one unit and moved as well. So it keeps everything contained in the one spot. So what I'll do now, I'll grab the camera and I'll basically go through and show you all the bits and pieces I've got in my modeling station here, and show you some of the highlights of what I really like to use in this setup. Okay, so let's go through all my boxes. So over on the left here is all the essential things for model building that I want close to me. So in the front I've got all my screw tips and drill bits. Behind that I have all my sculpting tools for when I'm shaping putty. There's scribers and spatulas. Behind that I have my strainer and all my flocking powders for doing carpeted interiors in models. And behind that I have all my Tamiya putties, which I use a lot. Over this side I have my Tamiya polishing compounds. I've got some glues in here. I don't usually use plastic cements too often, they're just there as a backup. I have some scribing tools and some old X-Acto blades, and I've got some new X-Acto blades and my selection of tweezers in the front. So as I said, I like to have that nice and close. That's why it's at the top, so I can easily reach over with one hand and get what I need. Now in the center here is all my hand tools and all my paints. Now in the front I've just got my selection of different size screwdrivers for when I break models down. Of course my mostly used tweezers and my X-Acto knife. The other side here I've got some X-Acto saw blades, pin vise, and some very super fine files for photo etch. Now over the back I do use zero paint sometimes, but not too often. They're quite expensive here in Australia. But I mostly use Tamiya enamels. Now why do I use enamels? Well, I paint most of my bodies, well nearly every single body, in automotive 2-pack or 2K. And acrylic paint does not go over 2K too well, but enamel does. So I can do all the rubber seals, trims and little detail painting all with Tamiya enamel straight over the 2K paint finish for the body. So that's primarily why I use Tamiya enamels rather than Tamiya acrylics. Now if we go over this side, this has all my masking. I've got some thinners, enamel thinner Tamiya, some 2K thinner. I have my masking tapes for masking bodies. I use this automotive fine line tape a lot, so this gives a nice crisp edge. You can get that from your automotive paint supplier. I use that all the time. I just have some pens and markers and my Molotow chrome pens in there as well. Always handy to have a set of calipers for checking diameters of rims and things like that. I've got my supply of all my different tubes and rods. This is all evergreen scale model styrene rods and sheets. I've got a heap of that in here as well. That's readily available here in Australia, which is why I use it. I've got my selection of paintbrushes here and my Tamiya Pro Series paintbrushes. I've got one of these little Tamiya battery operated drills. These are absolutely fantastic. I've used this so much since I bought it. It comes in a kit, you just screw it together. It doesn't take very long to put it together, and I can highly recommend getting one of those little Tamiya hand drills. Really very good. I've got some photo etch nippers there, just some Q-tips again, my decal setting solutions, so I've got some micro set. I also use the Walther's solver set a lot. I find that a really good universal one that doesn't affect any brands of decals at all. And I've got my glues here. Now I'm a big fan of Bob Smith Industries glues, all different ones. Instacure, which just a couple of drops and press it together and it's glued. The other one, which is MaxiCure, this is an extra thick super glue style glue. Good for bonding things if you don't have a completely flush fit. That's really good. And the Super Gold Plus. Now this is a non-fogging super glue and you can use this on clear parts, so that's fantastic. And they also have a debonder as well, so if you're not happy with what you glued, you can use this green bottle, the debonder, and it breaks the glue join. So big fan of the Bob Smith Industries glue. Now we'll go over this side. So mostly these containers, I use these for storing parts while I break models down. So for those that follow me on Facebook, you know I'm building a custom Lamborghini Gallardo Performante Spider. So I just keep all the parts in here separated until I reassemble the model. Then the box is emptied, ready for the next custom model. Now the box I've got under that is all my resin parts and leftover parts from other models. So I've got a huge selection here of brake rotors and brake calipers, some other resin parts in here, bits and pieces from different stores, clear windscreens, windows, and some other bits and pieces from other models. And then I've got a couple of bays just of old die cast pieces like hoods and doors and different things. I've got a selection of resin seats in here, some seats from other models that will be used for other projects later down the track, and some resin wheel barrels as well if I want to dabble and make some custom wheels. So that's that box. Now my favorite box of all is all my wheels. Now these a lot of these wheels came off models that I replaced the wheels. Some of these are new wheels that I bought from manufacturers, all in preparation for other custom models. So lots of tires, lots of wheels, and should be something there to modify another model. So that's one of my favorite boxes. I've got a lot of wheels on eBay for sale at the moment, ones I felt that I probably would never use, so I've put those up for sale, but these are all my keepers at this stage. I've got another empty box ready to start another model soon, and this is my photo etch box. So this has all the photo etched mesh, all the leftover photo etch pieces from model kits, huge selection of different meshes. I've got some leftover parts from other models here, plastic parts, and I've got some ribbon in here which I use for all the racing harness seat belts, so different coloured ribbons and seat belt labels, and I've got some detail parts in here for hose clamps and braided lines for engine bays, things like that. So definitely with building models over so many years, you tend to get quite a collection of parts. Always good to have some files on hand, some metal rules for measuring, and this is my Pagani box. So I've got some decal sheets here which is for an upcoming model, and you guys know I've built a lot of Pagani models, and these are all the leftover parts from all the Pagani models I've modified. So there are some new parts in here as well for some upcoming models, but that's basically most of my boxes and collection of parts. I've got one more box down there, but I'm not going to show you that because I've got a secret project in that one, so I'm not going to reveal that. Over this side I've got some Q-tips for decals and cleaning, removing excess paint off bodies. Just a little dish for my decals. I've got a little box here full of sandpapers and sanding blocks. Miniature files live in here as well. These are little jeweler's files, essential for model building as well. Do a bit of bending of plastic sheet or styrene sheet with a gas lighter. So I've got my gas lighter and my gas refill, which is handy. And I've got another little box in the front here, which has got all my toothpicks, which is good for applying small amounts of glue onto small areas, and just some other bits and pieces, old X-Acto knife blades. So that is basically all my different storage compartments in this workshop. Now I'll take you outside and show you where the Dremel and all the paint mixing room is. Okay, so now we're in my garage, and this is the area where I do all the messy stuff like grinding, die cast, all the messy sanding of putty, things like that. And this is also where I keep all my paints, and this is my paint mixing station as well. Now the bench top is not huge, it's only 4 foot by 2 foot, but that's enough room to do all the sort of work that I need to do. I've just got all my sanding blocks and bits of sandpaper, bits and pieces like that. I've got an air pressure regulator here, which is connected usually to my air compressor to keep all the moisture and grease out of the air lines. Just got my Dremel 3000 here with a hand extension bit, absolutely priceless as a model builder. And I've got all my Dremel accessories here where I keep them as well. So after all these years of model building, I've accumulated quite a collection of Dremel attachments. So this is basically where I do all my grinding and sanding here. Then above that is where I keep all my paints. So up the top I have all my Tamiya spray cans. So I use these mostly for interior colour changes. It's just a lot easier than mixing up 2-pack colours all the time. Some dust masks. I've got my paint mixing cups as well here. So these are automotive paint mixing cups, but I also use these a lot as well. So these are actually just medicine cups. They hold 60 milliliters, and they're really good for mixing up a small quantity of paint rather than using the more expensive automotive paint cups. Then I've got all my automotive paints. So I use De Beer automotive paints here. Now that is part of the Valspar company, and these are all the automotive paints. So I've got all the different colours mixed up from my automotive supplier, all the Lamborghini colours, Ferrari colours of all the models I've already done. And if I ever need a colour, I just go there. He can look it up in the computer and he can mix me up an amount. So luckily he's a really good guy, and he can mix me up a minimum quantity of paint, usually only around 100 ml. That one there is Bianco Avis Ferrari colour, but we've got tons of other colours. We've got Arancio Borealis there, Giallo Modena Ferrari colours, and we've got all the Lamborghini colours as well. So we've got Verde Mantis there, Giallo Orion Metallic. And yeah, so if I ever need any more new colours, he hooks me up and mixes them up for me. Just got some bits and pieces here, some ice cream sticks for mixing the paints. I use these a lot. I use these just Office Bulldog clips. These are great for holding model parts to spray, and just some Q-tips as well, just for cleaning. I've got some clear coat and some hardener. And these are the guns I use. So for my airbrush, I'm using an Iwata Revolution. Really good. I'm only a novice really at airbrushing. Picked it up pretty quick, but I only do a lot of detail work with this airbrush. Most of the bodies that I paint with these spray guns here. So these are made by a manufacturer in Australia called Star. And they're actually a mini touch-up automotive spray gun. So I paint all my models with this. I used to paint cars years ago, so I'm just used to using these guns. I've got a lot of control with these, so I continue to use these, but these are fantastic. around 120 Australian dollars each, and you can completely strip them down every time between paint coats and give them a clean out. So that's what those two little tubs there are for, just to strip the guns down and put it in some thinners and bottle of thinners at the end there. So that basically is where I do all my Dremel work, my grinding, sanding, and paint all, or should I say mix up all my paints for models. So I've got quite a big air compressor, a lot bigger than you need, but that is basically the air supply for my workstation and for my spray booth. Now, my spray booth. I basically built a miniature version of an automotive spray booth. A bit hard to film because I've got it down the side of the house outside with a roof on it. If we open the door up, I've basically made this all out of 1-inch box section aluminium, and I've glued aluminium sheets to the face of it. So that created all the walls and the roof, and then they just all bolt together. I've got it sitting on a marine ply base. This is just an 8-foot by 4-foot sheet of marine ply. This end here, we've got a air inlet filter, so this draws fresh air in from the outside, really high micron, so it doesn't draw any dust through. And then the other end, I have what's called a paint extractor filter. So this captures around 98% of the overspray that comes out of the gun, and I've got a 300 CFM extraction fan just in the base there, so it draws all the overspray through and then down and outside. So catches all the overspray on the inside but just blows all the fresh air outside. I've got a triple 2-foot daylight fluorescent tubes in the roof, which gives me plenty of light when I'm painting, and really a pretty easy way to create your own spray booth. This one I built in a weekend and cost me probably around 800 Australian dollars in materials to build the whole thing. So pretty happy with how it came out. I get a pretty good result most of the time. Sometimes I still get a little bit of dust in my paint work, but overall it's pretty good. And at the back here we've just got a rack that I've made which holds all the model parts while they're being painted. So this is another trick that I do. These are just a piece of 20mm dowel, wooden dowel. I screw some bulldog clips onto the end of it, and this enables me to clip the parts onto these sticks, and then I can hold them at a distance away from me while I spray the parts. So this works really good for the last few years for me. So bodies usually go up the top, and then all the smaller parts on the other sticks underneath. So I can just basically rotate through each piece that needs to be painted or clear coated and spray them in front of the extractor fan. So that is basically my homemade miniature automotive spray booth, and it works quite well. Okay, so that is my 3 modelling areas where I build all my custom models. So obviously having the spray booth out there, that's not something that everyone can have, but if you don't have the space or that's just too big for you, there's definitely plenty of little painting stations that you can use your airbrush in. So that's not something everyone can have, but works well for me. So that gives you a bit more insight into where I build all my custom models and the setups that I have. So I hope that was informative for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. I'm actually going to do a few more videos and break down some of the extra areas. I'm going to do a video all about automotive paints and really break that down and answer any questions you guys have got in that regard as well. And I've got a few more how-to videos as well, so how to make wide body fenders out of Tamiya putty, and a few other things I've got on the list as well to film. So I'm going to concentrate this year on a lot more how-to videos for you guys to share some more of my tips and tricks of model building. But I think that's going to wrap up today's video. My own branding of clothing, 118 by RobsModelCars. I've got a huge variety to choose from. Links to my merch store in the video description. and I've got some new products coming soon as well. So go and check out my merch. But that's going to wrap up today's video, so I hope you enjoyed it. As I say, if you have any questions for me, leave them in the comments section below. I will be sure to answer them all. We've got another 3 or 4 models arriving in the next 1.5 to 2 weeks, so we'll have some more model reviews for you guys as well. But until next time, thanks for watching Rob's Model Cars.